Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Giants of Lovelock Cave. Lovelock Cave is at the end of a long dirt road in rural Nevada, outside the farming town of the same name. The cave is famous because of tales that have been told about it by the Native Americans for centuries. The Paiute Indians have a legend about a group of people they called the Siteka. The Siteka were 10 feet tall and lived inside Lovelock Cave. The giants had flaming red hair and were absolutely brutal. The worst part about them was that they practiced cannibalism. They would steal people from nearby villages, drag them back to their cave, and eat them. The giants of the cave were only defeated once the Paiute tribes banded together and fought back. They trapped the giants inside the cave and lit a massive fire outside. The smoke from the fire was directed into the cave, suffocating all the giants hiding inside. It sounds like just another Native American folk legend, but there could be some legitimacy to the myth. In the 1910s, guano miners in the cave began to find strange relics. Researchers from the University of California began excavating artifacts from deep within. They supposedly discovered human bones that had been split open and drained of their marrow. It was no doubt the work of cannibals. But archaeologists also allegedly discovered the enormous skeletons of the Siteka. During the excavations, there were reports of mummified remains of two red-haired giants. One was a female at 6.5 feet tall, and the other was a male that was over 8 feet tall. However, those giants are nowhere to be found. Later on, there were rumors of skeletons measuring 8.5 feet tall and being wrapped like an Egyptian mummy, and another mummy was supposedly nearly 10 feet tall. But where are these skeletons today? That's the big question nobody can answer. The enormous bones were found shortly after the men of Lovelock first discovered the guano deposits in the cave system in 1911. There was a lot of buzz about giants in America during the 20th century, but the giant skeletons have all disappeared. These days, mainstream archaeologists say there never were any giants. However, Lovelock Cave was very popular thousands of years ago. There was a mysterious culture there about 3,000 years ago that left behind bones and artifacts and notches in the wall that seemed to be a type of calendar. A lot of mysterious artifacts have been taken over the years and can now be found in private collections. Number 9. The Necromancer's Cave. In Jerusalem Hills, located just east of Beit Shemesh in Israel, there is a place called Te Omim Cave. It's known more casually as the Cave of the Mother of Twins. Oral tradition, passed down for thousands of years, claims the spring waters within the cave have magical properties. All the way into the 19th century, women drank water from the spring, believing it would help them have a happy and healthy baby. The cavern earned its nickname from an infertile woman who drank the spring water and gave birth to twins. But as it turns out, the cave was in fact used in necromancy ceremonies 2,000 years ago. Necromancy sounds like something out of a video game, but it was totally real during the late Roman era. Te Omim Cave was initially studied in 1873. When archaeologists returned later to do an in-depth investigation in 2009, they found things that were missed the first time. They found 120 oil lamps dating back to the 2nd century AD. The lamps had been jammed inside crevices in the walls to illuminate the dark underground chamber. The archaeologists also found human skulls stuffed into some crevices, adding to the creepy atmosphere. A study was published in the journal Cambridge Core describing how the artifacts were likely used by ancient necromancers. The spooky cave may have also been home to an oracle of the dead. These people were called Necromantion. They were believed to have the power to speak with the spirits of those in the underworld. Researchers think the whole point of the necromancy ceremonies would have been to rouse the dead and try to predict the future. Number 8. The Midnight Terror Cave. The Midnight Terror Cave is about as horrifying as it sounds. The archaeological site is hidden in the jungle south of Belmopan, the capital of Belize. The cave was used by the Maya civilization because they believed it had a connection to the underworld. Like so many ancient cultures, the Maya associated caves and subterranean domains with the land of the dead. The cave earned its name in 2006 following an accident. The story goes that a tomb raider was exploring the region when they accidentally fell into a previously unexplored cave. They plummeted around 60 feet into a dark cavern way below the ground. It's a miracle they survived, though they were trapped inside a place of total darkness. When local farmers heard their cries and ventured into the cave to rescue the guy, they discovered skeletal remains all over the cave floor. This earned it the name Midnight Terror Cave. Following its discovery, archaeologists were extremely excited. It wasn't long before Dr. James Brady from California State University was leading an investigation. Researchers discovered roughly 10,000 human bone fragments. Most of the fragments were teeth, and about 25% of them belonged to children. Researchers believe the cave was one of the most brutal sites for human sacrifice in all the Maya kingdom. Researchers found that the bones were cut and bludgeoned. They also found blue pigment inside the cave. This suggests the Maya brought sacrifices into the Midnight Terror Cave, painted them, and then left their bones to rot. Number 7. Gorham's Cave. Starting 45,000 years ago, Neanderthals lived in Gorham's Cave, Gibraltar. They continued living inside the dark pits of the cave system until about 28,000 years ago. Generation after generation for 17,000 years dwelled within the cave. They probably liked it because the cave opened directly onto the Mediterranean Sea. When the Neanderthals lived here, sea level was much lower. They would have been able to walk out of their front door and go foraging for sea creatures. It was a seaside property. They didn't even have to pay rent. But the Neanderthals weren't the only people who lived here. Archaeologists have found proof of multiple civilizations occupying the cave throughout history, including the Carthaginians and the Phoenicians. One of the weirdest things found inside Gorham's Cave has been the remains of crows from about 30,000 years ago. The crows were harvested by Neanderthals for unknown reasons. It's bizarre because crows have been found in other Neanderthal sites across Europe. They seem to have been obsessed with crows, but researchers can't figure out why. The best guess is that they were harvesting their feathers, perhaps to use in some bizarre rituals. Number 6. The Grotto of Saint Genevieve. In the 5th century AD, there was once a mysterious woman named Saint Genevieve. She was definitely real. She was also officially canonized by the church, but nobody knows why. She's one of the weirdest saints in the world, with her own underground chapel built around a small grotto celebrating her life. But nobody knows what she did in her life or why the chapel was built around the shallow cave in France. There is a little bit of information about Saint Genevieve. She was born in 423 as a poor shepherd. She became a devout Christian at 16 years old. Legend says that in her youth she was involved in some kind of miracle, but there is no agreement on what the miracle was. One story is that she warned of the Hun invasion, giving the Parisians enough time to prepare the city for attack. Another tale is that she saved Paris from a cholera outbreak by convincing people to temporarily leave the city so they weren't crowded together. The third possible miracle took place in 1448. A bishop arrived in Genevieve's grotto dying of thirst. To save the man, she called forth a spring for him to drink. The miracle was enough for her to become a saint. Later, locals built a chapel around the spring. The small spring is still there today, within the pilgrimage site of Genevieve's grotto. But there is still no consensus on what happened to Genevieve. She is the patron saint of Paris, and people visit her grotto daily to pay tribute, even though they don't know what she did to become a saint. Number 5. Chiselhurst Caves. The Chiselhurst Caves in southeast London were made by human hands. The caves consist of 22 miles of twisting tunnels and dark passages. The tunnels have been used for a lot of different things over the years. Brickmakers worked out of the tunnels and other tradesmen. In World War II, Chiselhurst Caves were repurposed as underground shelters to defend against air raids. Some historians have argued that the caves were carved by Druids and used in secret ceremonies. Others think they were carved by the Romans. Sadly, neither theory has ever been proven. The earliest legitimate mention of the caves was their use as mines in the 9th century. They became far more active in the 18th century, used for producing lime up until the 1860s. During the air raids of the Second World War, up to 15,000 people would be stuffed into the tunnels at once. After the war, the caves became popular for performing bands. Music concerts were held down in the caverns until it was banned in 2001. All these years later, scientists still don't know who first created the caves or what they were originally intended to be used for. Number 4. Krubera Cave. If there really is a portal to hell on this planet, chances are it's located somewhere in Krubera Cave. That's because Krubera Cave is the deepest cave in the world. Its depths are so deep and confounding that no human has ever explored the entirety of the cave system. It's earned itself the nickname the Everest of the cave world for a very good reason. It's believed that the very end of the cave is about 7,208 feet below the surface of the planet. It's more dangerous to try and reach the bottom of the cave than it is to try and climb the tallest mountain in the world. But that hasn't stopped people from trying. Every year, a new team tries to get to the bottommost point of the cave system, but it's not an easy thing to do. Not only is it terrifying to be so deep underground, but there are serious safety risks. As a person continues to move deeper into the planet, pressure builds. It's the same as diving. This can make people delirious, which leads to mistakes and potentially getting lost. If you were to get lost in the twisting passages of the cave, chances are you would never find your way out again. Krubera Cave was only found in 1960 in Abkhazia near the Black Sea. It was declared the deepest cave in the world in 2001. National Geographic tried to map it with their own specialist team in 2005. They discovered a frozen waterfall and other amazing features, but didn't reach the bottom. The place is teeming with spiders and scorpions. There are weird shrimps living in isolated pools that have never seen the light of day. It's an extraordinary place, but one that humans don't seem able to fully explore. Number 3. The Sculptor's Cave. Sculptor's Cave is an amazing archaeological site with history dating back to the Bronze Age. It's most famous these days for the discovery of hundreds of child skeletons found in its creepy depths. The skeletons were found without their heads. The disturbing mystery has plagued archaeologists for years. Nobody can figure out what happened in the Scottish cave where hundreds of children lost their heads. The cave is located in Covesea, northeastern Scotland. Researchers have found Pictish carvings on the wall, proof that the Picts used it in the early part of the medieval period. They likely utilized the cave for ritual purposes and potentially as a burial ground, but it saw a lot of action before that too. Researchers have discovered evidence of ironwork from between around 1200 and 600 BC in the form of slag and crucible fragments. Primitive humans were shaping iron in the cave centuries before the Pictish people existed. Even earlier, people in the Bronze Age were using the cave to store huge amounts of pottery and bronze. Sculptor's Cave was clearly an important place for people in Scotland going back about 5,000 years. But there is still no concrete explanation for why hundreds of children's skeletons have been discovered here. Analysis of the bones has shown that many of the kids came from as far away as Ireland. This suggests the children were brought specifically to the cave to die. They could have been victims of human sacrifice. Researchers think their heads were likely put on poles and displayed around the entrance of the cave. At the same time, they may not have been sacrifice victims. Researchers have also suggested the heads may have been placed on poles as a way for the society to mourn the loss of their children. The kids may have been buried inside the cave because it was used specifically as a cemetery for young people. Seeing their heads on poles may have given the parents comfort. It seems wildly inappropriate and disturbing today, but these people in the Bronze Age had a very different view on life and death and the human body. Number 2. The Eyes of God. In Bulgaria, there is a really weird cave called Prohodna. It's the best-known cave in the country for one very specific reason. It has a feature known as the Eyes of God. In the ceiling of the cave are two openings that look exactly like human eyes. Standing inside the cave and looking up, it really does look like the eyes of God are gazing down at you. The holes are weirdly symmetrical, right in the middle of the chamber, and illuminate the cave in a divine light. Scientists say the eyes are definitely the result of natural erosion. They are still eroding, resulting in water that runs down from their edges to make them look as though they are crying. Number 1. Ancient human remains. In 1958, archaeologist E.G. Holland excavated Heening Woodbone Cave in Cumbria in England. He discovered the skeletal remains of 3 adults and 1 teenager. Radiocarbon dating placed the skeletons as being from the early Bronze Age, around 4,000 years ago. In 2016, archaeologists once more descended into the cave in search of ancient history. They discovered beads made from shells, stone tools, and animal bones. Those artifacts were from 11,000 years ago. They were made by Homo sapiens shortly after they became the only hominid species still living on the British Isles. Humans had beat back the Neanderthals to become the dominant species. Scientists have now discovered 8 people buried inside the cave. The skeletons have been dated by researchers at the University of Nevada and Pennsylvania State University. It looks like the cave was used at 3 distinct periods in the prehistoric past. First, there were the Homo sapiens 11,000 years ago crafting shell beads. Then a group showed up 5,500 years ago in the Neolithic period. Most recently, though, the Bronze Age people of 4,000 years ago were using the cave to bury their dead. Dr. Peterson called the discovery fantastic. He said the older burials could be some of the earliest proof of human activity in Britain following the end of the Ice Age. Thanks for watching! Which of these dark cave systems would you be brave enough to explore? Or which caves are your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!